These look like the men and women who are ready to effect those arrests.
Casey, you're right in the hub of Wash Ave, and I understand it's a Sunday night, but they've got a cigar bar, they've got just regular bars, I mean restaurants. I see the onlookers, but are the places open?
Well, they are. Where we have come up was a little more of the convention area, some of the places that aren't as much of the nightlife. We are now kind of on the edge of the nightlife area where you see the lights strung over Washington Avenue. And yeah, you're right, on a Sunday night, actually, this can be a time when you'll see some cars just kind of cruising Wash Ave, and there are a lot of people down here this time of night. And right now, the folks, we don't see a ton of people except for a few who have gathered on the corners to look. But I tell you what, really, when I look more closely at the crowd of people, they've either got cameras or bright yellow hats, meaning they are potentially journalists or the legal observers who often follow protest crowds in conjunction with protesters. Now, Tony, I can't see how far you're zoomed in. We've got a large police presence coming down there past this line of bicycle officers. You're going to see some police in dark uniforms, so it's hard to tell. You know, we can just, the St. Louis County are the most easily distinguishable because of the brown shirts they usually wear. These, I can't tell if this is city or highway patrol or some combination. So what we've got coming up here on the right, these are fire department ambulances from the fire department and a fire department supervisor. We've seen them go in different directions at different times. The interesting thing to note about those vehicles, driving that ambulance is a public servant of some kind, whether they are EMS, EMT, or police officers who have taken over that job, whomever they are. They're in full gear themselves. They have helmets on. They have the dark uniforms on and the protective vest on. So a serious situation, at least as far as they're concerned, for all aspects of public safety.
Casey, can you give me an idea? We did see some video in terms of damage of those planters being knocked over, and we also had reports that there were some glass windows broken. What have you seen in terms of damage?
What I've seen in terms of damage was what Jacob reiterated. There was that event space set up outside the public library. They pushed through that, tossed those chairs around, took some of them with them, took the tables that were set up, used those to block traffic on Tucker. And then as they went on down Olive Street, a lot of the buildings have those concrete planters, those large round planters about 3 feet high or so. Those were pretty easily pushed over, and then they break when they push over. And then as they turned on 9th Street and headed towards Wash Ave, that was the first time I noticed people picking up bricks or something and throwing them through the windows. I should also mention, this escaped my memory here for just a second, as they made that turn on 9th Street, there are those lofts above. Sorry, I need, if you could tell the control room, I apologize to be informal like this, but we need mix minus on IFB1. Mix minus, please. As we made that turn on 9th Street, going past the lofts there, and the name escapes me of those particular lofts, but they're right there as a part of the same building as the Cullen area. At least one person threw at least one object, a glass object that broke on the street at the protesters. So that didn't seem to help the situation at all. That was at 9th and Olive where that bottle came down. We saw it break, and we clearly saw it come from above. We looked up, and more than one person was hanging out their window, so it was impossible to tell who might have done it.
All right, Casey,
but that's
thank
the
you.
damage
We're going
we've
to get
seen,
back
Mike.
to you.
Windows and planters.
Thank you, Casey. We're going to get back to Jacob. He's a little further away. He is more south on Tucker and Olive.
And so I just want to pass along some new information that I'm getting from police. I just found out that a bike officer has been taken to the hospital, which perhaps explains why we saw at least one of the ambulances racing away from the scene. So he has sustained a leg injury, and I'm told that that leg injury is not life-threatening. I'm also hearing from St. Louis police that already in connection to the vandalism that we have seen in the downtown area over the last couple of minutes, there have been a number of arrests. I haven't physically seen that happen, haven't seen anybody taken into custody, but they're reporting a couple of arrests already. Don't know where that took place, and they haven't said exactly, but they did say multiple arrests have been made in connection to the unrest downtown. Behind me, you have a number of state troopers that really seem to be more in a holding pattern in case perhaps they are needed. I will tell you that a couple of minutes ago, while Casey was reporting live, we saw a bunch of city officers in their protective gear going north on Tucker toward Washington Avenue, past Locust, past St. Charles, perhaps going to the area on Washington that Casey was referencing when we had those bricks go through some of the businesses' windows. So really, I just wanted to get back on to pass on important information that we now have a St. Louis City police officer on bike patrol who has injured his leg, not life-threatening, but he is being taken to the hospital right now, and already in the last couple of minutes we found out there have been multiple arrests tied to this unrest downtown.
Have you seen, Jacob, any of these organized protesters? We know there were about 100 people at one point. In the video that we've seen from you and the video we've seen from our chopper and from Casey, it seems like everybody is dispersed, and other than bystanders, we haven't seen too many people down there.
No, I've seen hardly any sign of the 100 people who we had been reporting on earlier who had been out there protesting. Absolutely no sign of any of the larger numbers of people who were outside police headquarters at 20th and Olive earlier in the day, perfectly peaceful outside there protesting. I haven't seen any sort of those agitators that we've reported on the last 2 nights doing any of this damage. Casey, I think, is our only reporter on the ground who's physically seen the damage. I've been more along the law enforcement side of that, so I haven't seen any of the subjects, I guess we could call them, who would be involved in any of this criminal activity out here tonight. But you can tell they're definitely standing by. I'm guessing they are still out there in the downtown area somewhere, otherwise we perhaps wouldn't even see this law enforcement presence.
And then, Jacob, thank you. Also, though, most of it seems like that damage was about 5 blocks east of where Jacob and Casey are, more by the Schnucks, where that's happened, and where Casey saw people kind of dispersing into these smaller groups running down alleyways. He heard a bang and pop, but he didn't know what that was. That's where he saw some broken window panes and some overturned big concrete planters. So both of them are kind of on the outskirts of where we saw that damage now. So we're not really sure what's happening a couple blocks further into downtown towards the river.
But we can tell you that a bicycle officer, as Jacob Long reported, has been taken to the hospital with a leg injury. We understand it's not life-threatening, and there have been a number of arrests. Some of our chopper video that we have seen earlier, it looked like police had surrounded a group of people, and there may have been people being arrested on the corner of one of those streets. We have some new video into our control room, and here's a look at some of the damage. I want to ask the control room, this is on Olive. This is about 9th or 10th, and this is what Casey Nolan was talking about. And there's those bike officers who've been on patrol most of the night down there. Broken windows there at Patriot Personnel Services, but those concrete planters along Olive, many of them were knocked over, and then you can see there's also some window damage.
St. Louis Metro Police Department we heard them ourselves from our reporters. They're putting out that warning. This is no longer a lawful assembly. You need to disperse, giving multiple warnings. They've also put that on Twitter, and they are warning people who may be downtown, living downtown, going downtown for dinner or to a bar on Wash Ave, that you could obviously hit some traffic and maybe to avoid those areas. Let's get back to Casey Nolan, who is at Tucker and Wash Ave. Case? Do we have Casey? Okay, we're working on getting him. So we have 2 reporters right now as we take some pictures.
Can you hear me, Ann?
Yes, we can hear you, Casey.
Yeah, sorry about that. Now, I was just saying that you're seeing it as I'm seeing it. So that was, once again, the fire department, ambulance. That may be, Jacob was reporting an officer on a bike. We don't know what they went in and came out for, but that's what happened. We saw him come and go. And we still have a large presence of police here in the riot gear. What you're looking at right now, you have the bicycle officers. They've been kind of, blocking traffic at times. They're staging here at Tucker and Washington Avenue, along with a large presence of St. Louis County and St. Louis City Police. If we go left we will be headed. Yeah, they're officially shutting down Tucker here at Washington Avenue. If we go south on Tucker, Tony, we'll see. Still, they were moving a little bit earlier, but they've kind of just staging again. Now it's a large contingency of city police, and then just out of our view here, we've got a large contingency of county police. I stopped a captain and asked him if he could tell us anything. He said, you have to go through St. Louis City Police. He said, but I can give you a statement if you'd like. And I said, sure. And he said, it's a shame anyone had to come down to downtown St. Louis and do damage like this. So that's kind of the official, unofficial word there from the man on scene trying to protect his men and women and the property here in downtown. Again, just to recap, it was just off of Washington Avenue, just west of the convention center, back in on a side street, 9th Avenue, where we saw windows broken. We saw people throwing rocks or bricks or pieces of the broken off curbs, something solid into the windows, up against the windows. And then along that same road and then back up Olive, we saw some planters. So it's not, it's not good. It's also, a few broken windows and planters is what we've seen so far. So not on the scale of what we saw last night at this point, at least not from our vantage point. We have not seen what we saw on the Loop last night so far.
All right, Casey, stand by because we're going to get back to you, but let's go to Christina Coleman, who joins us now for the first time. And Christina, tell us where you are and what you're seeing.
All right, so I'm also here near Wash Ave and Tucker, but I have to tell you, I just came down near from around Olive. I stopped by Sushi Eye. I know some of the employees there. They're all in there. Some of them pretty upset. One of the guys that works there almost every day was just telling me he just doesn't understand. Why they came here. They wanted to start this business, and they just don't understand how they got roped into this and why their property had to be vandalized. I'm also standing here with a gentleman. If you want to come stand right here with me, tell me. So you were in Sushi Eye when the windows were shattered?
Yeah, I was just sitting down in the booth eating alone, and we heard a huge shatter, and then there was girls walking out, and when the huge shatter happened, they started running towards the back, and then that's when the owners said, everyone get in the kitchen, everyone go. And that's when I got it on tape. I see all the rioters just running across the broken windows, just running towards Locust.
And what were you thinking? Were you afraid? What did you do as soon as the windows were shattered?
So I thought originally that just the fish tank got dropped over or something, and then once the girls started running back and screaming, that's when I kind of jumped up and was like, what just happened? And then I saw all of them just start running past the windows, and that's when I went to the kitchen. I was not trying to be stuck in the middle of that. It was a crazy feeling.
Oh my goodness! And I noticed you're still sticking around down here. Do you live down here, or are you just?
My apartment's actually right here, so I had to walk back from Olive where it happened to over here, and then came down because I just saw all this happening.
So you live down here. So how does it feel to see all of this going on around your home? I mean, there was shattered glass, Clarkson Eye Care, you could see that, those planters knocked over, dirt in the road. Yeah. I mean, how does that feel to have this so close to home?
It's a weird feeling. Saturday they had the windows boarded on my building, and it was just weird to see all that going about and happening because, it's where I live, and it's not an easy feeling seeing your windows getting boarded and stuff.
Okay. Well, I wish you the best, and I hope you stay safe. I'm sorry you had to go through that. So, that's just another one of the many individuals who live in this area who are just, they're all kind of out here waiting to see what happens next. A lot of people, we were asking them, where did the people go who were down here that were throwing these things? A lot of people say they don't know, so they're just kind of standing around here. We just saw some emergency vehicles head down Washington Ave, so not sure where they were going to, and it looks like here are some people gathering right here at this intersection. There's a little bit of shouting, but I'm not sure what's happening. It looks like people are just crossing. Okay, maybe they're just crossing the street. So yeah, that's the kind of feeling right now.
Quick question for you.
Go ahead.
I know you know the people in Sushi Eye, you're a patron. When you were in there, one, did you see what was thrown into the window? And two, do you know how long those customers were stuck in the back kitchen?
No, I don't. I didn't ask those questions. When I showed up there, one of the employees who works there, he was so shaken up. He just came out and gave me a hug and was just like, "You guys be safe." And And I'm like, you be safe. And so that just kind of was the moment there. I didn't ask too many questions. He didn't want to go on camera. They were just trying to clean up and get out of there at this moment. But, you know, that's definitely going to be something to find out what they did. You know, they're just trying to clean up their business right now because they're concerned about, you know, other vandalism and any other thing happening to their property at this point.
Christina, what kind of damage, just so we understand what kind of damage?
All he does is sit there.
Did you hear me?
Well, the front of the windows was just shattered. Yeah, I heard you. Yeah, the glass was just completely shattered. There was just shattered glass everywhere, and that's what they were dealing with at that moment. That's what I could see. And then just directly across the street, you had Clarkson Eye Care. They also had windows that were shattered. And so, you know, if this was anything like last night, it just happened so quickly. It's like all these businesses hit at once, and then, you know, people are just kind of stunned. There's so much commotion. It's like, what's going on? So it looks like it looks like here comes the officers. They're moving up the street right now, as you can see. They're coming closer to the intersection here at Washington and Tucker. You have these officers moving closer.
What is the chanting?
And they're on there, you know, they're walking beside their bicycles.
What's the chanting?
They say move back. The police officers say, move back, move back. Yeah, that's what they say. They've been saying that every night when they come closer, and they're encouraging the people standing around to move back. So I'm not sure if that's because they're hearing more people are coming up the other direction, but that's what they're telling us to do, is to move back. And, you know, as you see, and the officers from the other side of the intersection have also moved forward. So it looks like the officers are all kind of just coming closer to this intersection for some reason, not sure what that is. But as you can see, 3/4 of this, well, 2 sides of this intersection is blocked off. As you see right here, you have these officers on their bicycles here on Washington Ave and Tucker. And then if you look behind, and if you turn, my photographer turns to the right here, you have these officers gathered right here waiting in a line. And then if my photographer turns around just one more time, you have these officers here on their bicycles just kind of gathering. So you see all of this, most of this intersection blocked off. And I'm not sure what prompted them all of a sudden to get everybody closer. They're telling us to move, so we're going to go ahead and move. You can see us walking there.
All right,
so we're just walking.
Christina,
down Washington.
We want to keep you out of harm's way, and so why don't you just go ahead and move, and we'll get back to you when it's safe. Let's go back to Tucker and Olive and check in with Jacob Long and see what's going on where he is. Jacob?
Well, Mike, so yeah, Tucker and Olive, and they still have the law enforcement here set up in the intersection, although the road is still very much open to cars that want to go either direction, north or south on Tucker. You can see, this is state police, I should say that, here, and I think maybe where Casey and Christina are, that might be city or county, but everything in this direction is a state resource. Haven't honestly seen a whole lot of movement from them. My gut tells me maybe they're on standby for help or for some additional resources, but I think we're looking now up at closer between Locust and Washington, where so officers are moving what looks to be like westbound on Washington, I want to say, in their protective gear. It's dark and it's far away from us, but that's closer where Casey and Christina are. We just had some state troopers come by here ordering some bystanders to disperse, that they have to leave the area. So we haven't actually seen any organized protesters or any sort of organized agitators. Those are the officers that I was just telling you about. They're kind of going one by one and getting some of the onlookers, some of the bystanders, just to get out of the area. Those commands, Mike and Ann, that we were talking about, that they do over the loudspeaker, it's been quite a while, probably since my first live report with you in this development, that we've heard those. I haven't heard those in a long time, so I don't know if that means that the situation is becoming more calm. It certainly doesn't feel that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, or it sounds like at least, that they don't have any plans to use any of those chemical agents anytime soon.
All right, Jacob, thank you. Now, Jacob, you see, he was telling us he's more at a staging area where they've got some armored vehicles there. They had some buses. But then just a few blocks away, we're going to go back to our Casey Nolan. And Casey, of course, you covered Ferguson. And it seems like, while that might be in a staging area, the last 3 nights we've seen just a heavy presence of bodies, of police officers on foot, we haven't necessarily seen as many vehicles be involved this time around, don't you think?
Yeah, in fact, I would say while they were actually protesting, you know, we talked about how they called off the planned protest for about 2 hours. The folks that stayed behind to chant outside the front of the police department, there was virtually no visible police presence. It's definitely changed here now. As you see, we're at Tucker and Washington Avenue. This line of officers here just formed. Told everyone to get onto the sidewalk. Tony, I don't know if you can just spin behind us just to show there's a little bit of people gathered here. You know, so they're from time to time they're mostly just taking cell phone pictures. A couple of times they've shouted at the officers here, but I don't think this is a group of anybody that was organized or even part of the impromptu protest. This is just folks on Washington Avenue. As you can see, a lot of citizen journalists, a lot of crews from all over the place here as well. So we're at Washington Avenue and Tucker, where they seem to be one corner at a time, kind of sealing off this area, sealing off Wash Ave.
And Casey, it looked like 3 out of the 4, there was traffic just a few minutes ago going east on Washington Avenue, it looked like, but it looks like that has completely stopped, and you've got all 4 sides of that intersection pretty much blocked off, yes?
Yeah, and then also a couple of blocks away as well. So I can see down to what I think is at least 12th, if not 14th. I can see down to 14th, and it's blocked down there, as Tony's showing you now, and then back toward the convention center at least 9th, at least 10th, if not 9th, it's blocked as well in that direction. And Tony, let's just kind of walk back this way. I want to get out of this crowd here just a little bit, give you kind of back off and give you a perspective. As you can see, a line of officers over here on the other side of Washington Avenue as well. Tony, you can see over there where they're staged. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ann.
Well, we just saw some people next to you as you were walking in the yellow hats. Can you just tell us a little bit more about their role in the last couple days?
Jessica! Yeah, I can tell you what we've been able to figure out over the last 3 years, because they don't talk to us, but they have hats and shirts that say they are legal observers, and they, presumably, and from what we've been able to glean, and then obviously just kind of common sense, just from watching them work, they're here to see if, mostly, I've never really seen them document any behavior by protesters necessarily, but they are here to see if constitutional rights are upheld as people protest and demonstrate, or if when they are arrested they will be close by, and they will also, sometimes I've seen them give information to people who are arrested, where they can call phone numbers and that thing once they are in jail and trying to figure out what to do next. So they legal observer is what they go by. They like I said, they don't really talk to us.
And Casey, have you seen any agitators? Because all the people around you, I see that woman right there. We just or 2 people with the bandanas in case there's pepper spray. Usually they wear those. But most of these people just seem to be like you kindly called them, citizen journalists.
Yeah, for the most part, either the Wash Ave residents, downtown residents, some of the folks I do recognize from the earlier marching. But, I will say, as that group that was left over or reorganized or whatever you would call it after they called off the planned events around 6:30, as that group of 100 or so made it down into the more narrow street, the more narrow section of Olive Street at that point, I think, after they crossed Tucker and things started getting a little more hectic. It was less of a march and more of a jog, and that's when the things were starting to get tipped over. A lot of those individuals turned around and left. I got that on my own Facebook Live earlier. It was also kind of an all-ages crowd at one point. We saw young kids, and right after they crossed Tucker, that's when things changed. And I don't know about all of the young people, but we saw some adults taking children out, getting back out of there, and then some other young people look like they're in their 20s turning around and saying this is too much for them, and they left. And then that's where we did see masked individuals or bandanaed individuals start to tip things over. What you're seeing now are the bicycle cops look like they're on the move, trying to clear Washington Avenue maybe one last time, because as Tony, you spin around, we got people on the other end of Wash Ave just coming out of the bars. You can hear stereos going, people just kind of having what was perhaps as much of a normal Sunday night on Washington Avenue as you can have right now. And so the officers on bikes don't seem to be interacting with them in any way. They're just going down Wash Ave. So who knows if they're just relocating or if they have any sort of a mission while they're going down Washington Avenue here.
So
between
Casey,
14th and Tucker.
we can now understand this large police presence, not only for the vandalism that we've seen tonight, but St. Louis County Police is tweeting that they're thanking the St. Louis Fire Department for decontaminating our officers that had unknown chemicals thrown on them downtown. So now you understand why you're seeing this kind of large police presence right near you.
Yeah, and there was a point when I saw some folks rubbing their eyes, but no one thought, the comment was, we did not see. I said, did the officers deploy gas or smoke? And they said no. So I wasn't sure why people were rubbing their eyes. I do not know if that was connected or not, but none of us saw anything deployed by the police. That was on Washington Avenue where I was at that time, Washington and kind of 9th near the convention center. And as you just saw, I believe, after those bicycle officers went through, now the long line of cops in riot gear just marched through, and there are still several stationed back here at Washington and Tucker.
And a lot of people may be wondering why are we
a much larger presence and also more coordinated than it was last night in University City, where they seem to be bending a little bit longer than they might have here once they got over across Tucker. Sorry, Ann.
No, that's okay. I mean, it's kind of a fluid situation. A lot of people have been commenting about the bike cops that we see, and we've seen a lot of them. And we just saw them go on kind of what you can call, quote unquote, the front lines down Wash Ave to kind of clear that or make their presence known. And then you see the guys behind them with the face shields and the body shields and the, all that gear on and the shin shields. But it's my understanding from talking to law enforcement that those bikes are actually, they're trained to use them as weapons, because you think these guys don't have anything but a bike helmet as they're going around town. But they actually will use that, you know.
Well, they're also
kind of
wearing
defense.
the protective. Yeah, and it's for their own personal protection. They also are wearing the, bulletproof is what we, the layperson, might call them, the bullet-resistant, the personal protective vest. They have their vest on under there as well. And then whether this is pertinent to how they decide who goes down the street first or not, this is very much a nightlife civilian crowd here. Just from looking at it, doesn't look like anybody was a part of any protest that's on this section of Washington Ave. They've come out of the bars taking pictures with their phones, so the first interaction there is with the police on the bicycles and then the officers in the riot gear. Whether that's by design or not, I don't know.
And Casey, I talked to a former law enforcement officer today, and he was saying just be aware that these officers, they've been on 12-hour shifts for the last few days, and they are exhausted. They are tired. They are stressed. We saw yesterday, we showed a picture of some officers praying before they went out on duty. And, when you get in that situation, it can be a very stressful situation, as I know you know from covering Ferguson.
Well, we experienced it a little bit ourselves tonight, not to make us in any way the story, but we did have one demonstrator, protester, grab our camera by the lens and shove it into our photographer because even though she was publicly protesting, she didn't want to be publicly seen, even though she was wearing a mask. And so I'm assuming she's tired and stressed as well, perhaps, or and so everyone here who is involved in this has been doing long days, and you're exactly right. I talked to a police officer. I said that we happen to know from stories in the past. I said, how are you doing? And he said, what you just said. He said, I'm exhausted, and you could see it in his eyes. They're not getting much sleep, and when they're on duty, they're dehydrated and on their feet all day with extra gear. So, yeah, you got a lot of St. Louisans on both sides of this line that literally forms often down here, and everyone is tired, and everyone is exhausted. Everyone at certain times throughout the night is in a very stressful situation.
That gear definitely doesn't look like it's cool. Also, Casey, let's just talk about the fact that we did have 3 o'clock. They assembled at 20th and Olive, St. Louis Police Headquarters. They did a die-in. They laid on the street. We saw people with strollers, with little kids, old people, young people, all the ages in between. And we had about 3.5 hours of organized chanting and walking around in a big square around the city. And then every night kind of this unfolds, right? They say, oh, that's it, we're calling it a day, guys, see you tomorrow. And then about 100 people, every night we've said about 100 people hang out after 1,000 or 2,000 gathered like this. This is what it originally was today, starting at 3 o'clock, which was planned since yesterday. But last night, in the heat of everything going on in University City, you just randomly saw this woman who went up to a broken glass window after it was damaged, and you had this unbelievable impromptu interview with her, and she really had a lot of great thoughts to convey to people about the protesters that are being lawful versus the ones that are not. Can you just kind of paraphrase her feelings so that people understand that there's maybe two different groups working here?
Well, Ann, that's a tall order because she was very eloquent and in a stressed situation, no less, as we just described for a lot of people down here. If what stuck with me the most was she was angry because it's already, an issue that involves race in St. Louis. That's hard enough to talk about, apparently, given our track record. And so you add on to that people trying to have hard conversations, trying to have some change in some areas that have been historically slow to change, and then while you've got that delicate situation right there, you go ahead and throw on something that nobody wants, and that's damage and violence. Now, obviously there are nuanced and varied opinions about some of the damage. There are those who will say that there might be a means that can somehow justify, an end that can somehow justify those means. I don't think a lot of people feel that way, and certainly that woman did not. She had her Black Lives Matter sign, and she was very angry that what she felt was a message worth conveying was tarnished, if just not drowned out by a very small percentage of people who did that damage that was very visible and very, just very visible last night on the Loop. We talked about 1,000. We heard organizers say 3,000. Hundreds upon hundreds of people marched yesterday. I personally saw an individual with a baseball bat, an individual with a hammer, and then reports from some witnesses who said they saw saw an individual with a hammer doing some damage. So then do the math there: 1,000, 2,000, 1 or 2 people. That's a small percentage that really derailed. If you're a person who believes that there is something productive that could come from discussing the issues that the protesters are chanting about, that woman was saying that conversation is going to be drowned out by a few people who did what they did last night, and then tonight as well. I mean, this is in the heart of downtown. This is a city that would like Amazon to come set up shop. And right now, the national spotlight shows broken windows in downtown St. Louis.
And I talked with the president of the Urban League, Michael McMillan. We'll have that for you on the air after the football game. And he was saying that it's the kind of negative spotlight that is on St. Louis that prevents us from getting big companies like Amazon moving here. And that woman that Casey was talking about, our Jennifer Meckles, went and met her again tonight, and we're going to meet her in a much bigger way than we were able to meet her last night and learn a little bit more about her. And Jennifer says she was once again eloquent today.
It was amazing because she was under so much stress, and she was so upset at the time. And yet
she was carrying a broom
and
right next to broken
Black
glass.
Lives Matter sign,
right.
And just trying to help clean up immediately after that damage happened. The one thing that stuck with me that she said was, the people that are being lawful and trying to deliver a message, which is basically just another version of what Casey's saying, but she said, you're giving the people who don't want to listen to you an excuse not to listen when this damage happens. So again, we will meet her and learn more about her, because all we did was hear a couple sound bites yesterday. Here she is.
When the first rock is thrown, when the first brick is thrown, when a chair goes through a Starbucks in University City that employs University City residents. Think about it. We know better. We have to do better. We have to unite. We have to admit that there is a problem in this country, a serious problem, and that whether it be white privilege or wealthy privilege, that there is a difference in this country. And we all need to be adult enough about it to come together, admit that, acknowledge it, and then solve the problem. We're better than this. This is St. Louis. We can do it.
All right, our coverage will continue after the football game, and if for some reason there is any breaking news, public safety issue, or press conference, we will be back here on Facebook Live.